I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be, when should you move in together? Got an email here from a viewer. He says, hey Coach, I appreciate your videos in your book, and I'm doing pretty well with my perfect girl. Granted that I'm 30 and I have some experience with girls. Some years ago, I decided to never settle for a girl that I'm not totally in love with. It's good policy to have a man. He says, and it brought a good result. It usually does. Most people just don't have the balls or the guts to either do the work on themselves that they need to do to attract the ideal person or to hold out long enough. Most people just settle. If you've read my book, then I talked about how I actually did this once when I was in my 20s. I settled and I married somebody that I shouldn't have married because I was young and I was dumb, and I certainly didn't have a family or anybody in my family that could teach me the right way to show up in relationships. So I had to learn all this stuff on my own. And I will tell you this, it was the first time I dated a woman and I fell in love with her, and she was in love with me. It was fucking magical. And it was worth the wait. It was worth all the shitty years of anticipation, the shitty childhood that I had, and everything else that I put up with or had to go through when I was younger. It's like the best fucking drug in the world, is being in love and being with somebody who's in love with you and who feels the same way, and she fucks your brains out, and she's calling you all the time and wanting to come over and show up and surprising you at the office with an afternoon blowjob when she says, hey, I just want to come by and say hello, and she comes in, she locks your door, puts your phone on mute, pulls your pants down, starts giving you a Hummer. It's fucking great. He says, with your work, you contribute a lot to it, and it's made it even better for me. Here's a question I have now. Me and my girl have been dating for a short period of time, 2 months or so. She's totally head over heels in love with me, and it was like that from the start. When we started dating, she had a boyfriend, and she lived with him. They have a lease together. When she met me, I made it clear that I'm not interested if she's with someone. She dumped him the next day and even told her kid about it. Well, that's pretty abrupt. Obviously, she was ready to get out of that relationship, and she must have really been digging you to just blow her boyfriend off like that. It's pretty awesome when you have a connection with somebody like that. It's very rare, but it's magical when it happens. And like when I look back over the last 2.5 decades of my adult life, it's like, I can't believe it's it seems like it was yesterday. But when I look back on my life, what I've realized is that you'll meet a lot of beautiful women, a lot of women that you're attracted to, a lot of women that you'd like to sleep with, a lot of women who would sleep with you. But what I've personally found is it seems like every 3 to 4 years, like when you're in between relationships, it seems like every 3 or 4 years in my life, someone's come along that's just fucking knocked my socks off. Now, when I was younger, I used to always fuck that up, and I would spend 6 months, a year, licking my wounds, trying to recover from the emotional heartbreak that I had that I basically did to myself. But, I eventually figured it out. I eventually got over it. He says they're not together anymore, and now the problem is she can't afford a lease on her own, and he's about to move out. I would move in with her, but she can't just switch guys like that in front of her 7-year-old son. Like, dude, you've been dating for 2 months. Moving in after 2 months is not a good idea. You're still kind of in the honeymoon phase. And at the end of the day, she's living with her boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend. I mean, that's kind of a fucked up situation, but, she really did dump him, and she's not still secretly hooking up with the dude. I can understand. He says, me and him get along really well at this point, but we don't tell him yet about our true relationship. It's like, oh, that poor bastard, he has no fucking idea that you're banging his girl. Oh, man. He says, this situation has lots of pressure. You think? He says, if she didn't have a kid, I would have just moved in with her right away. I'd say that would be a big fucking mistake. Because you don't know this girl, and here's what I've learned. It's like because you're obviously experiencing this for the first time in your life, and I know it's tempting to feel dopey and like, oh, we're going to be together forever, and it's like you're just completely ignoring the fact that she was living with some other dude. However, it appears that she did end the relationship, at least from what you shared with me, with this particular guy. And so the thing is that it's better to take your time, because the infatuation usually will last anywhere from 6 months to a year. And it's like the edge kind of comes off of that. It's like once you spend enough time around each other and you get really used to one another. I mean, you still love each other and you still have intense feelings. It's just not like the butterflies in your stomach, or where you just can't stop thinking about the person. You still love him, you still adore him. It's like, in a way, you kind of come back down to earth and you come back down to the normal level. And it's like you go a couple of days without seeing your girl, and then you go pick her up. You're like, oh my God. It's like, I love that. I love going to pick up a woman I'm crazy with, or I'm in love with, or my girlfriend. It's the best thing in the world, because the way she lights up when she sees you, how she smiles, how feminine she is, how sweet she is. Because women, when they're in love, they're extra sweet. They just glow with sexiness and sex appeal. And other guys will find them more radiant and more attractive when they're happy and they're in love, and it's a wonderful thing. But like I said, you're still kind of in the honeymoon phase, and you really aren't even together yet as a couple. And so I would advise against moving in so quickly. Now, it's like there are exceptions. I mean, over the course of my life, because of what I do and because of where I came from, anytime I came across somebody that had a really great relationship where she was like crazy about the guy and the guy was crazy about her, I always want to listen to them. Or when I find couples, they've been together like 50, 60 years. And you find lots of people that are together like that, but very few of them are like crazy about each other still. It's like you meet a couple and it's like, you look at them, they might be 80 years old, and they're like two teenagers for the first time. There's just smiles on their face. They're just having a ball together. They're having a blast. And it's so rare. And anytime I come across a couple like that, I always want to sit down and talk to them, hear their story, how they met, what they do to keep things interesting. Because you learn a lot from that, especially something. Think about it. Somebody that's been in a relationship and been in love for many decades, you need to sit down and listen to them and ask them how they do it, how they keep each other in love, because you'll learn stuff from them. I'm always learning. Like as a human being, you should never stop growing. You should never stop evolving. You should never stop trying to learn something or experience something that you haven't before. You always want to try to stretch outside of your boundaries, so to speak. But the thing is that I'll give you an example. Like when I was in my early 20s, I worked with a gal. Like when I was working tending bar when I was going to school, like on the weekends. And I had a construction internship during the day. I met this gal who I used to work with, and she still actually works at this restaurant. I saw her just a couple years ago, and we started talking, and it's like whenever her husband would come in, she just like fucking would light up. At the time her kids were, I think she had teenage kids. This is like 20 years, almost 20 years later, actually over 20 years later now. I was like, I can't believe it's been so fucking, it's just amazing. It seems like yesterday. But so she's got teenage kids. They were growing up at the time, and I remember her telling me the story. It's like she's just going about her life, and they met, and they were pretty much inseparable. And then, like 6 weeks later, they got married. And last time I saw her a couple of years ago, she's still like when she talks about her husband, she's always he's doing this, he's doing that. She's always gushing about him. She's so proud that she's with this guy, and she adores the shit out of him. She fucking dotes on him. She loves him. She takes care of herself. She's still in good shape. She didn't get all fat or let herself go. And they're just always smiling together. They're always having a good time. They're like each other's best friends, best buddies, and they're totally into each other. It's beautiful to see the two of them together. But that's a rare situation. It's a rare relationship, because a lot of times people get all infatuated with one another, and then when that wears off, they realize, I don't really have a lot in common with this person, because they got carried away. And besides, this is your first time in a relationship of this nature, and you should date this girl for a couple of years before, in my opinion, before you decide to move in together. Especially, I'd say at least 3 years before you decide to get married. I mean, you got to figure divorce rate's over 50%, and only 3% of the couples really have a great, outstanding relationship, the kind that you'd want to be in. And so the other 47% are just not miserable enough to do something about it. It's something to think about. It's like, take your time. It's no rush here. So he says, what would your advice be? I told her not to be afraid. I'm with her and we'll figure something out. But all I can think of is if she really can't make it and she's not ready to come out to her son about us, I could help her out just to survive. Well, you don't want to get into a situation where you're paying this girl's bills. I mean, if her boyfriend is moving out, she can just encourage her to get a roommate. Get one of her girlfriends to be a roommate, or find another girl that's got a small child that she could be a roommate with. That's the better situation, as opposed to you getting yourself into a situation where you're basically giving this money, an allowance every week, out of your cash to pay your bills. It's just not a good situation when you've only been dating for 2 months. If you guys are living together and you're a family, that's one thing. But when you're dating this girl and she's living currently with the boyfriend that she dumped for you, who still has no idea that the two of you are together. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Say, hey, get yourself a female roommate, maybe somebody that's got a girl that's another single mom's got a kid or whatever, and that'd be a great situation. That's how I would help her. I wouldn't give her money. That's the best way to handle it, so you don't get yourself, because I mean, who knows, maybe 6 months from now after the infatuation wears off, you realize you don't really like this girl because your confidence is growing so much and you're applying the stuff that I teach. Like I said, you just see how it goes, because like the first woman that I had a relationship with, and I wrote about her in my book, where I really was in love with. This was the first girl that I was head over heels in love, and that I really felt like this was the reason why I left my marriage many years before, was to be in that kind of relationship. And after dating her for a couple of years and after the infatuation wore off, I was left with the way she was and how she interacted in our relationship. And she was passive aggressive. She tended to cause drama, and eventually I got tired of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again and always fixing things that she fucked up just because she was fucked up. It wasn't anything that I had done. She just created unnecessary drama. And after a while, it gets old. So, I mean, you're really new to this. You don't know what you don't know, so be patient. Take your time. Help her. Recommend to her to get a female roommate. Tell her she can put an ad in Craigslist or in the paper. There's plenty of places that you can put ads for stuff like that. Or maybe she should get a one-bedroom apartment or get a smaller place or something like that. That'd be the best way to go, so you don't get yourself in the hook financially and get yourself into a situation that you feel guilty about, that you got to keep giving this girl money, if the relationship ends. So if you have a question you want to ask me, go to my website, click the Contact Me tab, which will be on the left-hand side of your screen. Send me 1 to 2 paragraphs max, and just give me several weeks to get back to you with a response. If you want to talk to me right away, the quickest way to get my help is to book a paid phone coaching session, and you can do that by going to my website, click the Products tab at the top of your screen, and just follow the instructions. And I will talk to you soon.